We are Gold Ivy.
Our mission is to empower you to own and unleash your truth.
Stories of resiliency are gold, and ivy grows in hard places.
Those hard places are what create space for light to shine through.
You decide what works for your daily life and how to transform our lessons into your gold.
This is Ivy Unleashed,
a Gold Ivy production. Brooke, what do you think everyone wants more of?
Energy.
What do you think most people are hoping to come out of 2023 with?
Feel more confident, be an example for others, actually have the self-discipline to take care of themselves.
Yes, exactly. Because we hear the need for it and we want to help you get in the best shape of your life, we created Move with Gold Ivy, our virtual workout platform.
Our dream has been to create accessible, affordable, and effective workouts that you can do anytime, anywhere, designed to hold you accountable and get you the results you need.
You can pick any workout you want at any time, but if you do want a plan that alternates muscle groups and leaves your body feeling energized and strong, we have a weekly plan that you can follow to take the guesswork out.
It's easy to navigate and packed with all kinds of workouts that will help you strengthen, trim, pump up, tone, energize, de-stress, all of the things we want our body to feel. It's within Move.
Don't forget to mention the resources we offer. As a member of Move with Gold Ivy, you'll be a part of our exclusive Ivy League community, where we share our top wellness resources on things like meal planning, gut health hacks, time management, and more.
And because you listen to the Ivy Unleashed podcast, we want to offer you all of this for only $20 a month, cheaper than any monthly membership you'll find.
Not only that, you'll get a free trial week to test it out.
And if you need more incentive to start prioritizing you, here's our favorite part. Your movement matters. Each month, 10% of your membership will be donated to support the mental health of those in need.
So head on over to goldivyhealthco.com/move or find the link within the show notes of this episode and sign up today. Stop putting yourself in the back burner. Snag your spot and reap the benefits that you deserve to feel this year.
It's your time. Move for your health, move for your confidence, move for your mental clarity, move with Gold Ivy. Welcome back to Ivy Unleashed. You are going to be so happy you're tuning in because today we are graced with the presence of a TEDx speaker, a Broadway actor, a human creative director. We've got Justin Schuman in the house. Justin, welcome to Ivy Unleashed.
Thanks for having me, Ivy and Unleashed.
I love it. We're so happy you're here. We've been following Justin on TikTok. We watched his TED Talk and we could talk for 6 hours today, but how you actually got our attention was Brooke and I like to talk about a lot of different things. We are multifaceted women who have different interests. Health covers a lot of different aspects. And as we've gotten pretty big on TikTok, the advice is niche down, talk about one thing, get your audience, whatever. And Brooke and I are like, we don't want to. Like, Brooke is huge for gut health, and that is great, and it works well for her to help people with that, but she also wants to talk about other things. And so one of us sent your TikTok to each other, and we're like, oh my gosh, listen to this guy. Justin is saying we can just be who we are. And so thank you for giving us the permission we didn't actually need, but you gave it to us to just be ourselves.
Yeah, happily. I have found over the last year and a half that apparently many needed the permission that, of course, they always had all along, but I was happy to be the one to say it because I think the language that you're referencing is overwhelming, to say the least, on pretty much every platform.
Yeah, and you're, like we just said, a content creator, but also a TEDx speaker, a Broadway actor. So we know a little bit about you, but our audience might not be familiar with you. So let's take it back to how you got to where you are today. Walk us through what life was like for Justin Schuman growing up.
Oh my gosh. So I grew up on Long Island, not far from the city, which is where I live now in New York City. And interestingly enough, don't have a ton of memories from being a kid. And then I would ask people around me, I was like, do you remember like a lot of being a child? And I've heard various answers. So I can't remember like my earliest memories, but my parents are divorced, incredibly amicable. Everybody's wonderful, which is great. I had a younger sister named Jordan, and 2 years my junior. And I think like some of the earliest memories I have are from like third grade, and they're not positive. I just remember being bullied from like a very young age, especially now at 31. I'm looking back and I'm like, poor child. And I think I just was always sensitive and like wise for a very young kid. Teachers were like my best friends. I just felt like much more understood by them. I had a pretty rigorous extracurricular schedule, even in third, fourth, fifth grade. And I think it was when I started taking dance classes, and it was very chorus line. My sister started dance classes first. She eventually stopped, and I was like, I want to try that. I stayed and I persisted with it. And I remember like hiding it sort of from people, but like, again, I don't know how they would have found out anyway. And I think eventually I just let people know, and it was just like game over. Third graders are mean. And I just grew up not having a lot of guy friends, which like I was really fine with, and I'm kind of still fine with. But yeah, kids were mean. And I just remember not being happy. I don't think I was sad. I just think I felt very othered. Like the older I get, realizing that I probably always felt this sort of like separate and apart feeling. And I'm trying to like, in the work I do now, I try to look back and I'm like, wow, did I just always feel sort of separate? And I think I did. Sixth, seventh, eighth grade, like I don't remember them being like wonderful times. I was a very smart kid, and I found my other smart friends because in a way they were other as well. And then high school was largely not good. I mean, I did theater, which was great, and one of my best friends to this day I met in high school. But I was, I ostracized feels too strong of a word. I wasn't a pariah, but I did come out when I was 14, which was like a very strong choice. And again, teenage boys are really insecure and are not comfortable when other people demonstrate a fraction of security. And so it was tough. I was like verbally accosted, in a gym class once, and just stupid things looking back at it. And then I'm like, where were teachers in any of this? But I don't want to make it sound like it was all so terrible. I really did love school. I'm an academic at heart. And I do remember, and this is from my TED, but I think it's worth noting, we had this event senior year called Senior Follies, where like all the seniors would get together and they would make fun of the teachers. It was like a really good, good-natured fun. And I was heavily a part of it because I was a performer and I loved this stuff. And I remember I was writing skits and I was like acting, we were in rehearsal and whatever. And one or two of the boys were like, "You're really funny." And I was like, I know. I have been really funny. You just never heard it or listened, nor have we ever had a conversation prior to this moment. So nice to meet you. I will say, it feels good to go back to your high school reunions though, right? So to anybody listening, although I'm sure you've either probably all been to a high school reunion at this point, that was a nice comeuppance, I will say, to be like, oh wow, y'all really peaked back then, didn't you? And then I went to Northwestern University in Chicago, which my mom found. She was like, because I was applying for musical theater everywhere and auditioning, and she was like, you need one non-audition school. So naturally we chose Northwestern, which is not by any means a safe school to apply as just as a non-audition option. But I got in there, and 4 years there, and then here. It's so weird to try and recount your entire life.
I know. We were talking about that. Minutes. We were like, do we ask about one specific part of his story? But we're so intrigued by you because those parts of your story are important, and it makes perfect sense, the work that you do, really helping people get to their authenticity. And it sounds like you were kind of forced to, like thinking of, this is not who I am. I'm not going to pretend to be this, even though I bet that is so hard at 14 to come out.
I actually think I didn't find it then, right? I think part of me was maybe always on the brink, but realized it was a very unsafe thing. And I also want to say out loud, like I grew up in an amazing family, very supportive. Like there was never feelings of danger or risk at home. But I just think I don't think I know. I can be chameleonic if necessary. And I think that I used that to my benefit when I was younger, to stay safe and maybe hide in plain sight sometimes. And I definitely used my achievements to sort of see, and I find myself quoting my own TED, but like, see me for what I do. Like, don't actually like look too deep, but like, yes, I'm the honors kid. And like, yes, I'm in all the APs. And yes, I'm always at extra help in the morning and I'm the last person who needs it. But yes, so that was who I was. I did go to a sleepaway camp for theater from roughly from 2000. Oh my God, the way time passes. 4 or 6, which is insane to say out loud that I can't remember. I think 2004 to 2009. And it was during the summer where I felt like I could be around a bunch of other theater kids that I was like, I think I'm finding myself here. But then it would literally be like pushing the pause button at the end of summer and being like, we'll return back to the discovery of who the fuck I am next summer. And so that was like, go home, do the weird thing again. It was weird. I don't know. I'm only now putting together the pieces of like, Jesus Christ, it all led me up to here. It like all did, which is really nuts. Yeah. Which is also why I understand you want me to bring it all up, because it is crazy. And we'll talk about the job stuff and everything too, but I really do feel like I am now at 31 at the intersection I've been walking toward for all these years.
Yeah. Well, and in your TED Talk, you talk about being in a box, right? Living in a box, performing for others. So let's get into that, because it sounds like, yes, you found theater, you found what made you happy, but you also hid in academics, you hid in plain sight. So talk to us about that idea of living in a box.
Yeah, the box sort of revealed itself. The construction of a TED is fascinating. Like, I hope everybody gets a chance to give some sort of like talk that means something to them in their lives, because it really forces you to sit down and go, what the fuck do I think about any of this? And it took me 3 or so months to construct that. And I had a dear friend who was sort of helped as my collaborator or co-editor, what have you. And so the box actually came up, and I'll throw it forward only because it was brought up already, where niches in social media was concerned. And I'll leave that alone because I'm sure we're going to go heavily into that. But I realized that why that felt so uncomfortable to me once I actually began my social media exploration in a meaningful way in like 2020, 2021, was because I had felt so stifled for so long. And this image of a box just sort of came to me. And in the TED, this is how I painted it. And I stand by it because it really feels so apt for everyone I've ever met who's been like, oh, I felt that too. I feel like when you're a kid at a very young age, and this is a shared experience or shared phenomenon I've heard from people, you don't come into the world with biases or judgment against yourself. But there is a person, or there are people in your life who then identify something about you. And it could be something as benign as your hair color. But as a kid, you don't realize that having fire engine red hair is not normal or is different. And you have no feelings about it until someone points it out about you and makes you feel some type of way for it. And that's what I remember. It was like my last name I got made fun of. And I'm like, what the fuck? I had no say in this. And also like, Schuman, like how odd is that? And so you just kind of get used to being like, okay, well, that thing that they picked on, I'm going to put that away. Like, let me do the best I can to hide that thing. The name thing was particularly tough because you can't hide it. Although I did consider changing it like many, many times. As I was considering going into the business, I wanted to be Justin Max. Max is my middle name. I didn't just like pull it from nowhere, but I did want it with 2 X's. And what then was reflected back on me that was like highly pornographic. And I was like, I do understand that now. So I think that this box represents everything about you that later on you find out, maybe if somebody has helped you unlock this, that everything about you that's special just kind of gets put inside. Anything that would have you be recognizable or noticed or stand above the crowd. And then the outside of the box becomes that version of yourself that you construct just to remain palatable and tolerable. And it's just so funny because I had a TikTok go pretty viral yesterday. And it's so clear to me just how many people really, whether they would call themselves a people pleaser or not, have been giving up their space to others for years for fear of fill in the blank. But again, for fear of being ostracized, for fear of being made fun of, for fear of being bullied, for fear of being anything. And that is really why I show up and do what I do, because I get to help people kind of crack their boxes open now daily and use social media, the very tool I think that has kept people in boxes for so long, to actually do the sort of like deconstruction, which is very exciting.
I always think about like being a kid, having divorced parents, which all 3 of us have, that was like the first thing that, remember I was at this church camp and it was like, step forward if your parents are divorced. And I like thought there was going to be like half of us. And it was just.
What kind of exercise required the divorced kids
to
step forward?
Now looking back, it is kind of weird, but I assumed that there was going to be like way more. There was like 50 kids and I was the only one that stepped forward. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm embarrassed all of a sudden, because when you're a kid, you just want to be normal. And so I'm so curious about that point, as we become adults, that we recognize, whoa, having red hair is actually really freaking cool. Or the fact that I'm really into this thing and really good at it, even though it's different than everybody else, that's cool. So like, what kind of work did you do to kind of dig deeper and reflect and kind of own this and accept yourself?
Oh, I don't know if I've done any yet. No, I'm stuck at, actually, it's funny that you use the word normal. And if there's anything I've realized lately is like that word actually doesn't mean anything until we give it meaning, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing with authenticity. And so I don't know what normal is, right? And all I knew then was that I didn't feel a part of. I'm not sure that was normal, but it definitely wasn't what I was. And so I was separate. And I always felt that way. And I'm just so grateful that I stayed the course and that I did have a supportive and protective enough family. Not that they needed to protect me from anything. I definitely like weathered my own blows, but I just see so many versions where, oh my God. So I said earlier that I might cry, but like not for this reason, but I hope I'm at a very emotional moment this week. I've been like crying constantly. So let it out, you guys. I just think that there's a really weird, scary version of this path. And doesn't really speak to my experience at all, but I'm speaking to the experience of the greater world that like suicide rates are really high, right? For kids. And I think that's also, that is a part of the reason I show up and do this work on social media, because social media is not going anywhere. And we could bemoan how dangerous it is, or we could try to work with it and use it as a tool. But like for being as bullied as I was, the fact that I kept my head down and kept doing the work, I'm grateful for myself for having that resolve, I suppose. I don't mean to make it sound like there's a weakness if it's just really scary. And so I'm stuck at normal a little bit just because it's a fascinating word right now in all of this work that I find myself doing. But I mean, I've had therapy and I've journaled, I've tried to do all that stuff. I wish I was like exceptional at inner child work, like sort of deep meditation, digging, but like I don't have stuff. Like I would love to maybe go to like a hypnotherapist or something to see like what we could unlock. I think there's probably some shit back there that's worth unpacking, but yeah, I don't know. I think it's actually, you feel it in moments. I think there's things that have stayed with you for so long. I'm saying like the greater you, that like when I drink, sometimes I get very sad, but then I'm like, wow, I've been sad for a long time. Like there is still a deep sadness in me somewhere. And I'm like, that came from somewhere. I don't think unless maybe in a past life I was a sad person, but like I think I acquired a deep sadness at some point, and that actually made me who I am today. And I'm not sure I've unpacked it, but I do think I'm starting to be aware of those pieces and how far back they go.
Yeah. And I think it's something you always unpack, right? Like you talk about, it's the practice of being human. It's a verb. You say human is a verb. And so that's exactly what I'm hearing you say is like, you don't just arrive. It is constant work to unpack and to realize like, what do I like? And aside from watching everyone else's life on social media, like what the hell do I even want?
There's the constant unpacking, yes, but there's even the ability to be like, oh, I guess anytime I want to go up into the attic and dig around, I can. Like it is always there, or go down into the basement and do the unpacking, right? Whether you're doing the unpacking or not, giving yourself permission to know that you can whenever you need to and reassess constantly. I think that's also part of it, that we aren't static. We aren't done. We're never finished. We are always sort of moving forward.
So I'm curious how you feel like we create access to this real self, to our authentic self. Because I feel like a lot of people are talking about authenticity right now, ourselves included. And a lot of people are still stuck in like that. I don't even know who the hell I am because I haven't even taken the time to figure it out.
Okay, but then I'm curious, how would y'all define authenticity?
That's a great question. Oh, well, I instantly think about when it's quiet, because my world is noisy. I mean, all of our worlds are noisy, but I have 3 kids in my house. And the only time I know exactly who I am and what I want out of my day and how I feel and what I'm needing is when it's silent and I'm journaling, I'm in prayer, it's morning. And then I feel like the rest of my day, I feel in alignment. And if I don't, I know, like if I know I'm off or not being authentic to what I want, I'm anxious, I'm irritable, I'm not that great of a mom, I'm just on edge. And so for me, like you said, I resonate with that. It's like a feeling for me of when I feel on fire, it's because I'm living in alignment. I've done the things I know I want to do. I know what my day looks like. I'm helping people. I'm talking with Brooke. I'm meeting new people and learning about their life. So yeah, for me, it's definitely a feeling like if it's off or if I drink alcohol, I get some signals of like, this isn't what I want to be doing, or these aren't the kind of conversations I want to have. I definitely have like a unsettling feeling if I don't feel like I'm being authentic.
I feel like for me, it's being in a flow state, right? It's like, I'm not thinking about what I should be doing. I'm not judging. I'm not comparing. I'm just like fully me. And I'm not even thinking about who I am. Like, I'm just showing up however the hell I'm meant to show up. And then maybe it takes depicting that and pulling that apart of like, when I was in that state, when I was feeling in flow, what was I doing? I was being creative. I wasn't comparing. I wasn't scrolling on social media. I felt inspired. I was dancing. I was laughing. You know, I think for so many of us, when we think about authenticity, we think about labeling ourselves. And isn't that what we're trying to not do?
Well, I mean, I appreciate you both answering, labeling ourselves and trying to what we're not trying to do. I want to go back for a second because I actually think, no, I've like never been more convinced. I think that who we are every day in our lives is actually just it's a habit system, right? And so it's interesting to me when you say like, for me, authenticity settles in the moments when I'm not thinking about who I'm being. And then I would, you know, if we were in a one-on-one or you were a client of mine, or we were having a glass of wine, I might poke at you a little bit and challenge you and say, okay, so in those moments when you're not even cognizant of who you're being, who's the habitual self? And is that a be that you decided, or did somebody else decide it at some point for you? And then you find flow occasionally, you find fire. But the be who you are when the you who you are when you're not even thinking about it, was it decided by you? Because that to me is the big difference. And I had a lot of like brain blasts. So I started waking up at 5:30 in the morning, going right to the gym. And I found like my brain is like on fire when I'm at the gym that early. And it's been a really, I mean, conflicting because I'm trying to like do pull-ups and I'm like, go away. But there are a lot of thoughts that I've had recently at the gym. I in the TED, I defined authenticity versus inauthenticity as this idea of a self-directed performance versus a performance of self-directed by everyone else around you. Because so I think it's interesting when you say that it comes in the moments of silence, because I've realized that I'm not sure if one can be authentic or inauthentic when by themselves or in silence, because they're not performing. And I believe that to be authentic, one must be being. You have to be inside the athletic performance of yourself, at least what I feel, because I know in this moment, you are getting a Justin Schuman who's performed. It's totally authentic. I know exactly who I am and what I'm doing in this moment, but I'm doing podcast, Justin, right? Like I'm here, I did my hair, like I'm sitting up straight and we're having a conversation. Thank you so much. And you know, I'm cogent and I'm making my arguments and all of that, but I'm not the Justin that was like on the couch zonked like an hour and a half ago. That was like, holy shit, I got a shower for the podcast, right? Like I know who I'm being in this moment, but I'm absolutely performing myself. And the thing that people start to like push back to, like, we're performing. I'm like, well, you're doing it anyway. That's the gag. The real thing is like, you're doing it regardless. So are you subconsciously habitually being the self you've been for years that's directed by others? Or are you willing to sort of like dig in and be like, it's those moments when you're in a conversation at a party or something and you're listening to the person talk and you're like, I'm not even enjoying this conversation. Like, why am I here? Like, what am I saying? This is dumb. Why did I even come here? I don't like half these people. It's those moments where you're like, weird. Oh, weird. I made a choice that was not really my own, but I felt that. Or like, I've definitely been places before where I've been like, I don't know why that came out of my mouth. That's not even how I feel about that thing. I will try it again. And I've done that because I'm trying all the time. And I do encourage other people to do this as well. Mean what you say and say what you mean, but also decide. Like, I do think we decide who we are, and then that becomes the habitual self. But a self-directed version becomes habit. And I also think that that's what confidence is. Confidence is when you can really walk into a room and know that whoever's there or whatever situation you find yourself in, you can still be a chosen version of yourself. You're not going to fall back into some old like Jello mold that you once, knew the shape of genetically. Example I'll give is like family holidays or like people going home to spaces where they might typically like regress to a younger version of themselves, or people who have difficult relationships with their parents or anything like that. But you did ask, like, what are the in what ways can we find this? And it's really as small as like speaking a little bit louder when you order your coffee from Starbucks, to asking your server their name when you go out to eat and like going out of your way to use it once or twice. One, to like make them feel seen and they're a fucking human being as well. But two, it's like, it takes a little bit of like being and doing in those moments. And I do ultimately think storytelling is this huge gift we have. And that's why I think social is so great, because it's the storytelling tool we always have next to us, right? At any given moment, you can show up and tell that story. And when you're doing like I'm doing, you're standing on the thing and you're just talking, you really have to be centered with yourself. This is a balance beam moment, right? For those who have watched the TEDx or not, I am balancing a lot of things right now, right, while I be me with both of you.
I think it's important to think about that technically you're always performing. Like technically anybody you're interacting with, you are in a performance based off of what they want you to say, what you want them to say, the whole thing. And when you talk like that, it makes me think about why we're drawn to you. And I think the big piece of why you consistently go viral is you do feel the authenticity. Like when you're talking to, I'm like, how did he hook me in this again? Like I have been sitting, like who can talk for 4 minutes on TikTok and I'm still here? And it's because I think I'm watching you understand yourself. And when you watch or you listen to someone understand themselves, like Brooke and I do as we're growing and learning and making mistakes and talking about them publicly, I think people are drawn to us because that's the piece people want. Oh, how did you figure that out about yourself? Oh, you're a workaholic. How did you figure out you're a workaholic? Oh, you figured it was a coping mechanism?
Oh, you're a human too?
Right. Yeah. But the way, and obviously you're an actor, a performer, so you're good with words and inflection and look beautiful and all of these things that really draw you in as well. But I honestly think it's like, I feel like I'm sitting in your kitchen when you're making coffee. Like I feel like I'm there and I'm like, oh, so I want to thank you for how you dissect what you're going through. You break it down into these little bits and pieces that all connect together. And so it helps people piece together their own puzzle, because they see themselves in in some way, shape or form, and it's clearly resonating. And so I just want to keep making coffee and talking to us.
Oh my God, absolutely. And yeah, and thank you for sharing that. I think that I didn't expect content creation to become what it has. And I do still feel like in a way I'm just scratching the surface, which is really fun. And it is nice to know that like on an app that's not designed for 4.5-minute videos to get 1.4 million views, like that does feel good, because I'm also like, y'all, this is what I'm talking about. Like if you can just show up and tell a story and connect, you are rewarded. And I don't mean algorithmically, but like 1.4 plus million people watched a video I did about my sister. And the comments were like in the thousands of people who were like, I've never heard somebody share this about break this apart in this way. And I was like, I'm so good. I'm so glad that I did then. I thought to show up and share this stuff. So you're welcome. And thank you for watching. I'm thrilled that you do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and just for people that don't know, do you want to talk about your sister and how
let's do it.
And how that plays into, we have a lot of people that listen. Everybody's lost someone, right? And what we like to talk about is how that plays into your mental health now, right? Like grief is not linear. It doesn't just get better and better. It hits you like a ton of bricks out of nowhere. And so to hear how it affects you now with all your success and everything that's going on in your life, can you talk to us a little bit about Jordan and how that affects you?
Sure. Yeah, thank you. And I mean, there's also people who will be listening who are like, wow, he talks about grief with a lot of humor or levity. And also like, yeah, we all talk about grief in different ways. And I'm like, we have to. I'm like, I'm not going to sit here and weep through the rest of my life. And it's just, my mom and I talk a lot about we're still here, so we have to pull the positives, right? Because like we just decide we have to because we're still here. I lost my sister in a car accident in 2015, and it was terrible, as one could imagine. And it's just like, I don't know, especially recently, I've had to like relive this story or this whole thing. And I will say that even every time I say it, it does not sound real. It can't be my story. That's insane. And as it came out of my mouth just then, I was like, oh my God, this is really, that happened to me? Like, oh, this guy must be fucked. And I'm like, he is. It really just is like, you can't even really put into words just how awful, that is. And then to watch your parents go through that, which is just honestly almost even worse. That was just terrible. I do think that the fact that I work a great deal is a coping mechanism, and perhaps because there's stuff that I don't want to deal with, I'm sure there is. I do think that also when you're faced with mortality at a young age, especially when someone very young passes away, it can do a very like, what the fuck is it all for? Like, yes, we could talk about legacy and we could talk about whatever, but there are some times where I'm like, what am I even doing all this for? Like, I have these goals and revenue's nice and helping people's amazing, but like, and what? So it's a very weird thing, because grief also does give you perspective of what matters and what doesn't. At least I think so in my own life.
I love what you said about how it makes you think about, does legacy even matter? And it just makes you question everything with mortality. Like, what the hell? I don't know. It's like hard to put even in words. Like I feel what you're saying so deeply. And I've never lost a sibling, but I lost some friends in high school at that age where it's like, oh, I'm for sure dying by 18 too. Like there's something in you that I think all of a sudden you're like, okay, that's just what happens. Like this is going to happen to me too. I don't know what it is, but I liked when you talked in your TED Talk about how she was fully herself and like put it all out there. And you can see that in you too, that like life is short. So why would you be anybody but yourself? Like, what are we trying to do here? If you're literally here for 2 seconds, why wouldn't you just do what makes you happy?
Yeah. Yeah. And I will also say, like, to her credit, I do feel like there was always something so much about her. And you know, she went through her own, not bullying and stuff, but she definitely, like, also being a girl, just like hard. Being a girl in high school, like, other girls are mean. Like, I know I got bullied as well, but like, had I been like a straight male, I would have been totally fine. But like, girls are mean. And so I like watched my sister have to go through some of that shit. And she had her own moments, right? She was bossy and like she had her things. But I will say, to her credit, she really, not that she didn't give like a singular fuck, because I think she found herself, but she really did go through that discovery phase. It seemed like a lot earlier than a lot of kids do. And I think what's almost saddest to me is like, we were like just starting to become friends, you know, because it's like, oh my God, I don't want to lose it.
Take your time.
Ugh. It's been a week. And that's the part that we won't get, which is like, that sucks. Also, it's like, I gotta deal with so many parents dying one day. LOL, my mom's listening to this. She's like, I'm fine. But it's like, there's shit that your siblings are supposed to weather with you. And that is like, LOL, annoying that I'm not going to have somebody with me for those things. So that kind of sucks. And I know I'll feel it even differently. I think that's the other thing with grief too. It's like, you said it's nonlinear before, which is totally true, but you also like don't even know what you don't know that you're not going to feel when you might feel it when you don't. It's like insane. And so I find myself attending weddings now, and I'm just like, oh, weird. Another thing, like I won't. It's like these weird things that happen as you go through life, and you continually reposition yourself to all of these events. And as we said before, you continue to change. So your relationship with all these things continues to change. So it sucks. I do think that it is just something you carry with you and you integrate it. But I will also say it's not something that like consciously weighs on me, but I'm sure it subconsciously weighs on me. I don't think I think it's the only honest way of saying it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and you said, you know, I'm sure there's a lot of feelings that you haven't processed that are hidden deep down. And that kind of is where the workaholic plays into it. So I'd love for you to speak on that. You did a beautiful TikTok on it. So just kind of share your thoughts on that with us.
Yeah. Well, even just to respond to this, like the feelings, another place is, so I went through a breakup last June with somebody that I thought, I was like, oh, this is it. We're great. I mean, like, of course it's hard, but largely it was wonderful. And he broke up with me, the very gall of it all. He'll never hear this, but nothing about you guys. I happen to know he'll never hear this. And I will say, like, breakup specifically, for anybody who's like, wow, I wonder what grief of that magnitude feels like. Bitch, go through a breakup. And that's about as close as you're going to feel until you really do suffer a loss that's very near and dear, because the broken heart thing is so very real, right? And the only thing that sort of mends it, or doesn't even mend it, but just like brings the pieces back together so the scar tissue can form, oof, what an image, is time. And so I did find myself working a lot in my relationship as well. And I didn't always, but I think in the moments when I didn't feel chosen by this person, I then started to choose me. So I think I also like shifted my relationship to work because I realized that work wasn't just something I was doing to make money. It was also something I was doing to like elevate my station, and that my name was, I was going to work on my brand and my name. And so all of this work was also feeding. It wasn't just dollars in my bank account. I felt like I was actually changing my life by pouring time into this work, because the work that I do, today, it's work that I really started thinking about in 2020 during the pandemic. This idea of coaching and working with people, although I did not know even remotely what that looked like back then. But yeah, I mean, I also realized that work is like one of the only places I feel in complete control of everything. I know who I am when I'm in work mode because I just do. I just know what my task is and what my role is. But it really is about the control thing. I'm finding, especially as an actor for so long, where you have no control over your anything. It feels like I've become sort of addicted to autonomy and agency as a person. And I love what I do, which is like the biggest, best trap there could be, right? Because really I've like monetized everything that I love, which is like funny on the surface and like very sad underneath, because it is hard. I made another TikTok about this where it's like, what do you do for fun? And I was like, I don't know. I do podcast interviews, I guess, which is still work, kind of. And I do have a wonderful group of friends, and I am social, but I work 7 days a week. That's like not even a small question. That's not something I'm proud of. It's not something I want to continue doing, but I am in a moment where, but in that TikTok specifically, I talked about, I think workaholic is one of those sort of glib labels were ascribed by people. It's like, oh, such a workaholic, but it's not as like benign as shopaholic, right? Which also, by the way, is not terribly benign if the person legitimately has a compulsion to fucking buy things.
No.
But it's like, and in the video I said, like, alcoholics don't wear alcoholic as a badge of honor, or typically. Workaholics, I don't believe, although I've never spoken in a group of people who identify as such, I don't wear it as a badge of honor. I definitely wish it was something that I had better balance of. I definitely think I've always been very conscious and cognizant of glorifying busy. Like, how are you? Oh, I'm so busy. Well, that's not a state of being, but it can be for people. So I really do try my best. I mean, y'all answered me at the beginning. You asked how I was, and I was like, yay. Like, I will try to be as honest as possible, because I could always just say, oh, I'm so busy, I'm working so hard. But that's not. I don't want to define myself by that. Although I do feel like my identity lately is incredibly defined by work.
I'm curious about just how much you have on your plate, like, with us having the social platforms that we have and all of the different hats we wear. I imagine that with yours being even more magnified with your TEDx and the fact that you've been on Broadway and how big your TikTok is, how your phone is probably always just lighting up and on fire. And so I'm curious how you kind of manage, you mentioned your social group of friends on top of having your social media blowing up all the time. Like, how do you manage communicating with your people and balancing work and play and being able to be available?
Not
for
well,
friends?
always, I'll say. I will. So again, I do think when you work hard, you then afford yourself options. And so, for instance, I did a couple of months ago, I hired a prioritization coach, which has been helpful. It's a company. They work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and the whole thing is to help you identify and then work on the higher leverage activities in your life. And that's another thing, like, I've learned in terms of like my executive functioning and ADHD. Like, I don't always have a great time of identifying. I've got really big ideas. I definitely do the visionary thing. I don't do the execution thing well all the time. So we have a lot of milestones we've set sort of for the year. And I said to her, I was like, balance has to be one. So now every week she's like, and what are you doing this week? Who are you seeing? What are you doing? And so frankly, I have someone guilt me into seeing people.
That's
and it's
great.
fucking great, because there would be periods in January, for instance, I didn't leave my house for like 6-7 days because I was launching my membership and whatever. And it didn't even like think twice. I was just like, yeah, well, I'm just inside for a week, which isn't healthy for a person. I also think that it's about having the people in your life who will understand when that text doesn't get answered, right? Or who, and people always say, I think this is like sort of just a known trope of like, oh, well, when I cannot see my best friend for a month, and when we see each other, it's like no time has passed, which is, yes, true, but you really do flex that luxury and privilege with your people when you are so inordinately busy, or when you're on Broadway and you have no life. I mean, really no life. I will say it was a glamorous job in and of itself, and I will absolutely do another show at some point. I'm hoping, and I'm sure, but you have no life whatsoever. So I do my best. I will say that I'm glad that I'm geographically close to home on Long Island, because I can go home frequently, and my parents are very generous with, they'll come and grab me, or they'll drive me back to the city. But I work when I'm home, right? Like I'll still go home and I will have clients and I will do podcast interviews from home. I did one the other week. So you really do make it work. But I will tell you, like, I've had so many messages come in just during this, but like from WhatsApp, Slack, and iMessage. And I'm just like, And so it's sometimes just nice to be like blissfully ignorant. And you know what? Sometimes it's at the end of the day, we're talking about getting a post up on LinkedIn, and it's just like, it's not all that deep. And if I cannot, then I cannot. But I do also have a team that helps me at this point. I could not do this by myself in any shred of imagination. But balance has not always been my strong suit at all. But I will always get things done. I'm an incredibly high achieving procrastinator. I will say that.
I'm curious how you don't let that affect your mental health, right? Like, you're so busy, you are wearing all of these hats, but you're also on social media. And so, yes, you're showing up authentically you, but are there certain boundaries that you have set where you're like, okay, we're not going to compare? Or how do you keep your authenticity when you're seeing everyone else's life and highlight reel?
I don't really care about them. And I don't mean that with like, I don't really mean that in a mean way. I always say this, and I think it comes out funny, but like, I kind of mean it like in a very wonderful way. Like, I don't care about my audience. And I don't mean that I don't care about them as individual human souls. Of course I do. I don't create content for you guys. I didn't make that workaholic video so that you would hopefully ask me about it on this podcast. I made it for me. I was sitting in my beanbag, which I lovingly call my depression chair, because I bought it when I was depressed. Still am, by the way. But I made it for me. I was in a really weird moment, and I was like, I'm feeling a type of way. And I know that I can put my words outside of my head and then manipulate them and understand them more deeply. But I just know myself in that way. But I consume a bit of content, but I don't scroll like I used to. I just can't. It's just too, I spend so much time on these platforms already that I don't need to sit there and scroll. I also work with creators constantly too. So it's like, I feel like the veneer or the shine is all gone. It's like, I know what this is right now. So like you just see through it a little bit, but I also don't really play the comparison game either. I've never, maybe back when I was an actor, I'm still very much an actor, but I think that I had a more difficulty playing compare and contrast when I did more performing and I was auditioning more than now, because I do feel like what I'm doing is very singular. And to me, that doesn't feel self-aggrandizing. It feels just objective. I know no one else is talking about social media who happens to have my background. There is no other Broadway actor who's also been a photographer for 13 years and helped people be comfortable in front of the camera, who's also experienced deep tragedy and grief, who also happens to be sensitive, wise, empathetic, all the things that I already was, who's also good at running businesses. Like, I am a very specific amalgamation of a person, and I don't mind owning that very proudly and being like, it wouldn't help me to compare because no one's doing what I'm doing, and I'm frankly not doing what they're doing.
Oh, so beautiful. And I think I know what so many people needed to hear, because I feel like as business owners, people who are trying to sell their services on social, they want to see what's landing, and then they tweak their content. And that's what all of the quote unquote content creator coaches say out there is like, listen to your audience, what they like, make more of that. And you're saying, I make what I like and what I need, so that what resonates with the people will resonate, what's meant to resonate. You don't have to alter yourself.
The people that it will resonate will find me. Because also the thing that people forget, and y'all know this, but like, I'll get these clients who after a one-on-one session, they're like, holy shit, this all makes so much more sense. Or I can't believe the way that you put the pieces together to me. Like, there's so much clarity here. And I'm like, well, good, because this is a really long game. And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, well, if you want to be a creator, like, you just signed up for like a really long thing, right? You're not going to make like 3 pieces and like, you're done. Like, you're doing this now. If you want to do it, you're telling me that you want to make money doing this. So it's like, if I continued to show up and only made the content that I thought my audience wanted to hear, or I just was agitating the fuck out of their pain points or whatever, I mean, I can't, that's why it's stifling and suffocating and inevitable burnout.
I keep thinking about people kind of like yourself, actually, that maybe when they were younger, it didn't really feel safe, you know, when you're getting bullied to be yourself, right? And there's a lot of fears that come up, like Brooke and I play with, like not drinking. And it's a little scary to go into your social environment that you're usually, you know, drinking a ton of wine at, and then you're not. You know, I think facing these fears of starting to really get to know yourself or starting to perform the real you when you're around people, like thinking of those people that are just getting started that kind of are probably unsure even of who that is, like what advice would you give them?
I think that for those people, and I don't actually think I've ever said this out loud, but it just came to me as you were talking about it. I think sometimes it's enough to also it's enough sometimes to be conscious of the shift that you start to feel, right? An example I'll sometimes give, or I have given before, is like you're about to walk into a party, and right before you walk in, you literally can feel yourself start to turn into the version of yourself that you would have for the benefit of those other people. I think even starting to be aware that you're shifting is a really helpful thing, because then you can at least you can continue to act with awareness. And then if you can act with awareness, then you can make conscious choices, maybe to not do a certain set of behaviors or to not say some things that might have just been the habit, that habitual self we were talking about before, but the one constructed by the other people at that party, right? So I think for the people who are starting to do this work, or if we really are looking at the balance beam, and for those who haven't watched the TED, to me, the practice of being yourself really requires this act of finding your balance, the balance beam itself being the authentic performance of self, the two sides one could fall off onto, one being the very performative version of self and one being a very, very small, sort of secluded and hidden. And I do think we fall off on both sides constantly. But in either of those situations, getting back on the balance beam requires a little bit of the other one, right? So if you're quiet and you're shielded, then you do have to dial up your volume just a bit, right? And if you find yourself being the class clown who is really just making people laugh because you're terrified of what they'll see if they stop laughing and ask you a real question, you probably have to be quiet for a little bit, right? And just sit in observation and really receive. And I've never really thought about it that way, but I suppose I do like to think things in terms of ingredients as well. And I think that sometimes your ingredients need whatever it's going to, you know, if you've oversalted something, it's hard to come back from that, for example. Right. I'm like, I watch enough Food Network to know that. But I do think it is sometimes playing at the opposite, just testing it out and seeing what that feels like. Right. And I do think being myself very loudly now, not in terms of volume, but occasionally in terms of volume, is this beautiful correction and at times overcorrection of many, many, many years of quiet.
I think being centered, right? That's where that idea comes from. And as you're saying that, that's what I picture is like, where do you feel like, I don't know, this feels kind of icky, going back to how we said how feeling like ourselves really feels, and only you know that, and you have to be aware of that. So something that was really helpful for me, and as you're speaking too, is like bird's eye view of viewing myself, an out of body experience. And anytime I do any meditation or any deep work, I picture myself from a different view, because you can see how you're performing, and is that in a line of how I really want to be performing, or is it I'm adjusting my volume based on the people I'm with? So I think looking at it.
I had this idea the other day and I wanted to do a TikTok about it, but I didn't come up yet with a way to break it down in a way that wasn't so convoluted. I've had people start to like challenge me on the things that I believe, which I fucking love. Like I'm all for discourse. And I had somebody once said to me, okay, so there's this job I really, really want. And I have to go to a job interview, and it's my second or third interview, and I'm meeting the guy at like a restaurant. We're going to do a meal and we're going to chat through things, but I like really don't like the guy. She's like, are you saying that me going and being rude to him like that, or like if I went and I was polite to him and I like said what I needed to say to get the job, that's authentic? And I said, yes. And she was like, but that's not how I really feel about it. And I said, well, that's fine. You decided how you were acting in that moment, correct? And she was like, well, yes. And I said, and you really want the job, right? It doesn't matter what you think about the guy. You want the job, right? She's like, yes. I said, so in your own best interest, in a life led with your North Star being your own self-interests, you'll do what you have to do in that moment to get the job. You're being authentic. You're being dishonest, but you should know that about yourself, right? And that's what people are not ready to clock. People are not ready to say like, oh, I'm fine with being dishonest. I'm dishonest regularly. I'm around people sometimes I don't enjoy, and they would never know that, right? I'm deciding who I'm being in that moment for the benefit of everybody and myself. but it's me deciding that. So I'm being authentic. I might not be the most honest person ever. And I was like, ooh, that is something that I really have to talk more about. I just didn't know how to say it in a way that would make total sense. But I guess I could use that example. But that's what I'm fascinated by. Sometimes we take that look above and we're like, oh, wow, I'm being a bitch. But like, like I feel this way in this moment. So that's real.
Yeah. When you say that your own self-interest could be your North Star, a lot of our listeners are like moms that their North Star are not themselves. And so this whole conversation, I feel like could be really hard for some people to be like, what? Like, how do I even put myself first? Like, how do I own this? And I think that the more that we hear your conversations to yourself about what you're going through and seeing yourself and how you're circling back to getting it to serve you better, like getting the benefits out of life of feeling more aligned, feeling more on fire about what you're doing, helping people because you actually know who the hell you are. And so do you have anybody or any clients you've had that are like, I need help even caring about my own self-interest?
So I this is just an interesting aside in like the moment of like, what kind of coaching am I going to do? I was a mom coach for a bit because I do love moms and moms love me. And so it was like after I did this like pretty inane business coaching thing, like I was a student and paid them way too much money to tell me basically to make myself the smallest version of myself and help one person with one pain point. And that person was moms. And that pain point was their loss of identity. And so I was like, cool. And I did it for a bit and it was super rewarding. I mean, like I love helping people and I am a very feeling empathetic person. So I do this for my one-on-one clients still, I can like put people on kind of for a second and understand them. And then at least with content, like I will like structure pieces as them. And I'll have clients go like, how the hell did you do that? I was like, I understand you and I put you on for a second. I imagined how you might say it. And that was your story. And they were like, okay, well, wow. And so I did work with a lot of moms for whom their identity had become muddy, especially after moments of big transition, leaving the workforce, rejoining the workforce, kids leave for college. And it was very, very rewarding, but it really did come down to those younger years, right? Like I unpacked a lot of high school years with some moms because like, that's when the shit went down and watching the realizations go off in their eyes of like, oh my God, because that kid made fun of me in junior. Oh my God. And I'm like, yeah, that shit stays. Right. And so I will also say I, as a coach, consultant, strategist person who works with clients, it's hard. There's conversations where I'm like, that's for a therapist. Right. And I've absolutely said that to clients before, but like, if somebody's like, I don't even know how to begin to start caring, I mean this with like so much love. That's not my client. Right. Not that they're not my person, not that I couldn't speak to them but I would feel terrible charging them what I charge for my time. I would never want to take their money to just help them realize they deserve to care about themselves. That's not what I'm in this for. I'm in this for meeting them after that point, or they've consumed enough of my content or enough of somebody's content. And they're like, okay, cool. I'm ready to at least believe for a moment that I might matter. Then I can grab them. Then we can start. Right. But I don't want to charge somebody to help them realize that they deserve to take up space. Of course, that's what I end up doing with my clients a bit, but that would not make me feel good. I would not want to take that person's money.
Yeah, there has to be a level of self-worth already there, is what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah, and not like I'm saying like, oops, sorry, you have to be this tall to ride the ride. I just mean like it doesn't feel good to me. The goodness is gone. I would rather lead a free workshop, right? Then I could talk to people about it. I wouldn't want to charge you and it just doesn't feel right. It feels icky.
Yeah. Brooke and I have to say that a lot to people. Like this, this is coaching, this is therapy. They're different. And it sounds like, when people have like overeating and they definitely need a therapist to work with them on their childhood trauma that they're filling with food, right? Like we can coach you on your behaviors and set up your environment differently, but you've got some really deep rooted childhood issues. Yes. That need some.
And something I do like too from like true coaching education is, and I pushed back really hard against this when I was first learning everything, because I did the whole coach education, which I thought was super valuable, but you don't really always need to know why. right? Like, meaning me as the consultant, I don't always need to know the why. If it happens to reveal itself, awesome. But you might not even know the why, but you know what your current behaviors is/are. So we can start there, and you do know where you want to go too, right? So I do think the unpacking is so valuable, but it goes back to that question earlier about like, I want you to know that the attic and the basement are both there. I don't always have interest in going up there with you to like dust and open the boxes, but I do know the work that we do will support you in going up or down with more facility and ease. But yeah, there's so many things I'm not qualified to do. And I will also say people don't show up anymore, like on my Zooms or on my one-on-ones. I think I have shared myself so aggressively at this point that people know what I do, at least to a point. But sometimes people need a good pep talk, and I'm down for that. It really is colors of everything. For a while, I was calling what I do content therapy, which I checked with my lawyers. Therapy is not a protected word, thank God. Therapist can't call himself that, which I never would. But it really does. We do get under there, but not on purpose. It just is like when you start talking about deservingness and taking up space, that shit comes up.
Yeah, yeah. And I think a lot of people following, right, they don't want to be content creators, but to what you said earlier about social media, it's not going anywhere. And so we, as content creators, as people that are posting things, we can either elevate people or we can make them feel like shit. And our purpose, right, is what we're posting helpful? Is this inspiring people? And so people listening right now, even if you're not trying to be a content creator, we highly recommend that you follow Justin for that reason, because he is the type of person on social media that you want to follow. You want to get inspired by. You're watching these aha moments as you're having them on camera, which is such a beautiful thing. And it's raw and it's vulnerable. It's what we stand for. So for people listening, where can they find you, Justin?
Where can't you find me at this point? I'm a lot of places. So I would say TikTok is sort of the mainstay at this moment until they take it away from us, they being the government. And I'm not sure they won't have good reason for doing so. But as of right now, you can find me on TikTok. I'm also on Instagram, same handle on both, Justin Schuman Official. I've made my foray into Twitter, although it's been muskified, but I'm there doing the thing now. So over there, I'm just Justin Schuman. Unfortunately, couldn't grab that across all platforms. I'm on Pinterest. I'm on LinkedIn. I think that's it. I would say if you want to like DM me, the best place is probably Instagram. I find TikTok's DM system to be bad. So Instagram is the best place to DM me. I will do my utter best. I promise to get back to you. Yeah. And then there's a myriad ways to work with me as well. You could work with me as a one-on-one client, which again, you could find through any of my social platforms. But I would say that probably one of my favorite offers and something that feels really pertinent to possibly some of the listeners is I do have a membership, and it is the Just Human Well membership. And it really is this community of and we launched for the first time in January, and we continue to innovate and add things all the time. So I've been gifted with this beautiful group of people. But the core is we really all walk through life pleasing others. And the name of the game is how can we use content as a tool, both to do this work, some of that unpacking, right? I like to talk about the building of your personal brand with content. Makes sense because content is both the manifestation of your personal brand, you're being you through the storytelling, but it's also the iterative tool by which you can figure out who the fuck you are in the first place. And that's really what we do in there. And it's a frankly very low ticket way to get a lot of access to me, and to do it surrounded by a lot of people who just really lift each other up with a lot of love. So that will launch again in April. And so the timing all seems to work out very nicely.
Yeah, I just keep thinking about how you're just this unicorn of a person, like just how all of your life experience has gotten you to what you're doing and what you're creating. It's so cool. And the fact that you've been on Broadway too, and to know like how you can step into someone's, you're an empathetic person and you've been an actor, that you can step into their life and show them how to perform kind of on social media, or what that could look like. And they're probably like, holy shit, that could be me. That does sound like me. I feel like that's super cool.
Yeah. I thank you for saying that. I guess I hadn't put in that. Yeah, I suppose it is, but that's the gag of all of this. It's just, I'm just asking my clients to pretend. I just happen to be asking them to pretend to be them. Right. Like I like to say, I want to help you human better. And it's not be a better version of yourself. It's like, do you better, like perform yourself with more efficiency and joy. Because if you just acted as if you were more you, who might that be? The problem is you for most people is still a big old question mark. So if I can help them do that work, or at least give them the tools or encourage them to start to do some of that work, the practice of being themselves, then we can go, okay, cool. You got a lot of colors available to you. Like, what do we want to scribble out today? right? This is a TikTok I made forever ago and I would like to remake it because it didn't really perform in the way that I thought it could have. But I think that most of us are playing with like an 8 box of Crayola, when in reality, we probably are the full on 64 box with like the little sharpener in the back, with so many shades of yellows and blues and reds. But we've just been told to, mute our colors or dull our shine. And so we're playing with our primaries, like maybe a purple every so often, but certainly not an azure or like a rose,
I love it. Yeah.
I want to be the full spectrum, baby.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. Keep discovering more
of
what that is for you.
Yeah. Thank you for giving us the permission. Like Andrew said earlier, we didn't need, but we all need to hear it every single day of do this work to be more you. You're not trying to be different. And I think that's a bad rep that self-growth gets, is like, why can't you just be happy with who you are? But you have to discover who you are. And quite frankly, who you want to be more of. Like what parts of you are you missing that you want to elevate and shine light on? So thank you for the work you do. And we're so blessed and grateful to be with you here.
Oh my gosh, you are so welcome. Happy to continue doing it.
And something that you may not know a whole lot about right now, but gold stars are really important for our listeners because people like takeaways. They like tangible steps, things they can do. They like a 1, 2, 3. Justin Schuman, how can I start putting this into place? So could you share your 3 gold stars?
The next time you introduce yourself to somebody, don't apologize when you say your name. Turn down an invitation to something that you do not want to attend, but feel like you should go out of obligation. And even if you have no intention of posting it, prop your phone up, hit the big red button, and just tell a story, even for you, and allow yourself to sit in the fact that you're not going to say it right the first time, and that doesn't matter. It's about giving yourself the space to even put the words out and interrupt the silence of the universe, even if no one's ever going to see it. What a great first step that you did the quote unquote cringy thing of talking to your phone and sharing a story.
I love that. Wow. That's amazing. That's so different than what anybody's ever said. And I think the important piece is you don't have to be a content creator to do that. To show yourself, I deserve to take up some space.
Whether you're a mom, whether you're a student, like whoever you are, take up the damn space. You are worth it. Okay, we could ask you a million questions, but I promise we'll just ask you 3 more. Our Unleashing Ivy.
Ivy grows in dark places, you guys. We'll figure it out.
Sure does, baby.
Woo! God,
okay.
I asked. Do you know yours?
Yeah.
Okay.
Justin, my Unleashing Ivy question. You mentioned depression earlier, and I want to know right now how you are taking care of your mental health.
Poorly some days. I think Better Living Through Chemistry is fabulous. I'm on Wellbutrin and Strattera for depression and ADHD. I enjoy meditation practice, although I don't do it enough. I have a gratitude journal that I haven't used in like 2 weeks. I'm always aspiring to take better care of my mental health. And I do have one boundary that I set for myself weekly. I attend hot yoga on Thursdays, and it is like, for me, a religious experience. And it is quite literally the one boundary I set in my life.
Well, we've seen your workouts. That's good for your mental health too. You've been getting after it.
Yeah, but I'm also a vain bitch. So like I want to look great, it's like it feeds both the brain and the muscles. So
I like it.
Well, we appreciate your honesty.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
We just love mental health questions. Mine has to do with ADHD. And I'm curious how ADHD has affected your life and how it's served you well.
Yeah, that foray into my neurodivergence it has been new, and it's been really nice because I didn't realize so many things I've done for so many years were manifestations of it. I find touch very, very overwhelming sometimes. My executive functioning in terms of like how long things will take is very skewed. I'm like, I look at the dishwasher to unload it. I'm like, that's going to take 40 minutes. And I'm like, and I do it. It's like 3.5 minutes later. I'm like, wowie. And so that's been like interesting. How it's helped me is I think I think I move very fast mentally. And I think that is possible because of however my brain fires. And so I am grateful for my like ability to have sequential thoughts very quickly. I also think it makes me a really powerful coach consultant because I can hear everything you've said and like categorize it away very quickly and then use it and help you with that. Even if I don't retain it long-term, although I do have quite a memory for that stuff. Yeah, I think the way that I sequence information in my head is pretty special.
That's so beautiful. Mm-hmm. Such a cool way to look at it. Mm-hmm. Okay, and last question. If you could go back and tell younger Justin one thing, what would you tell him?
Yes, I want to get out of here without crying.
We won't let you.
That's clear. Ivy grows in dark places. It really feels contrived, but I really would just say like it really does get better. So just like the things that currently you feel like very othered for, just like keep going. You'll be fine. Just like, I promise you. It gets good.
Thank you for saying that. And I just want to say, I think when I think about things getting better for you, I think it's more of you digging into who you are. You're such a beautiful person. And I feel like I have a million more questions from what you just said for the last 5 minutes, that you've been through a lot and you wouldn't really know. You're so funny and bubbly and you're an actor and you've had such success, but everybody goes through these dark times, right? Everybody has this stuff they have to work through. And I'm just so thankful that you're sharing it, because all of these light bulb moments you're having, you're helping so many people. So keep doing that. And you can rely on us if you need some accountability with that meditation, if you need us to tell you to get outside, whatever you need, we can be that for you.
Well, I'm grateful. I appreciate you both.
Yeah. And for our listeners too, I hope what you're taking away is that you're not alone, that you can have someone who is going viral on TikTok, right? You can have people who are showing you what it's like to be healthy and to take care of themselves. And we all struggle, and we all struggle with self-worth, of thinking we're not good enough, that we can't. And so you are not alone, but there's always something that you can do to better your situation, to not play the victim card, to look at things of they can get better. And so I just want to congratulate our listeners for listening and for doing this work, for being here. It's not easy, but you are carving out this time for you. Hopefully you got a little entertainment from Justin, because how could you not laugh? And if you're watching on YouTube, which definitely recommend, you're getting to look at this hunk. So just want to thank you, Justin, and our listeners for being with us today. We couldn't do what we do without you, and for normalizing being human.
All right, Justin, we do not want to let you go, but it is time for your piece of gold, a quote that speaks to you.
Oof, I really do love a good quote as well. My mom shared this quote with me in college, and it's not like earth-shattering, but it really has stuck with me forever. I didn't have the best initial time in college, and my mom said, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? The squeaky wheel gets the grease, and you could be the most polite nudge and just like, and I have found that people are really afraid to be squeaky. And so I think that the squeaky wheel gets the grease. You got to make a little noise sometimes, and that's okay.
This is Gold Ivy signing off.
Listen to your truth and go chase your gold.